Hi guys. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. Um, to please turn off your phones or silence them. We actually encourage you to use your phones to use to submit some of our questions. We'll be using Poll Everywhere and Twitter, and then also old-fashioned hand raising. For Poll Everywhere, if you want to submit a question through that, you text 22333 and then type IST startup space and then your question. And then for Twitter, you can just use the hashtag IST startup. And then if you're in the classroom and you have a question to ask, please remember to press and hold down the button next to your computer while you speak, and then I'll be running around with a microphone as well. And with that, I'll introduce our speaker for today. This is Kate Jenkins. She is a software engineer at Ejenta, a San Francisco AI startup whose Internet of Things platform uses agent modeling to monitor and reason about human behavioral information. She holds a bachelor's and master's degree in magnets and materials engineering from MIT and spent the next 10 years going west, California for an engineering PhD, Japan to work in engineering research, around to Germany for a science PhD, ending up in California again to work at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab as a physicist. Kate has been involved with startups as a co-founder or employee for more than a decade in different sectors. So please enjoy Kate Jenkins.
Hi. So I live in Silicon Valley, I live in San Francisco, and the very, very most important people in San Francisco, when they're asked to give a talk for about 12 minutes. So when this was supposed to be 75, I kind of freaked out, but maybe we can work together and you can ask some questions and we can pretend it's like Steve Jobs in the Apple keynote and we'll make it through the whole 75 minutes.
Excuse me, I don't know who's in charge of the tech, but for some reason I think your mic is coming through like our classroom.
So ask that guy in the room behind the mirror because he's the one who hooked it up.
Thank you.
All right, now everybody gets to hear me. We have basically 4 points that we're going to talk about today, and it pretty much mirrors your syllabus, except I use different words. The very first thing we're going to talk about is innovation and entrepreneurship, and what that sort of means. What you call that in the syllabus is exploring the case for gender diversity and other kinds of diversity in IT. I'll sort of contend that IT is not so much a sector anymore now that software is eating the world, so IT is kind of in everything. But nevertheless, it's sort of a worthy way to discriminate what kind of company something is primarily. We'll talk about sort of women at work in the Valley. We'll talk about, and again in the syllabus, this is sort of called gender diversity, barriers to recruitment, issues with hiring and retention. I'll sort of try and concentrate less on this, but there are definitely some examples that we'll go through that are just infuriating, and there are examples that we'll go through that are just sort of tacky, of either abject, obvious sexism, or kind of just smash your face in frustrating obliviousness. And we'll look at both kinds. But the important thing that I'd like to concentrate on the most is how to move forward and how to end up at the end of the day with a more productive and more profitable workforce that also happens to include more women. And the profitable is the important thing. I use Entrepreneur Barbie, which is this year's most recently released Barbie, as, I swear it's true, as my example of one of the things. There's a lot of pictures through this. A lot of them I actually really like because a lot of them do some major symbolic imagery. If you guys are also taking any kind of humanities classes, you will absolutely see sort of Sheryl Sandberg in her red dress, questioning the status quo. And we'll see, I was talking to your professor about if you know sort of about the Ellen Pao story and Gamergate. So there are just some nice images. They're sometimes, but sometimes not related to the text. The text is sort of what I'm going to talk about, and the pictures are just to look at if you're bored. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's probably it. There was one last thing. That's what it was. This talk on the schedule was called Girls Who Code. This is not my title. Girls Who Code is an excellent organization. They aim using summer internships and summer immersion programs to get high school girls to take an interest in a career in computer science. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. They're a great institution, but I'm not claiming any affiliation. Other titles I was going to call it after I saw that, and I said, no, you guys have to change it. And they said, what do you want to change it to? And I said, what about Women Who Code? No, there's an organization called that. What about Women Who Start Up? No, there's an organization called that. And all of these are valuable and noteworthy organizations that are already trademarked, so never mind. So that's why we ended up with innovating while female. So the very first thing I want to talk about is innovation and entrepreneurship and what it sort of means to be a founder and why I want to talk about startups in particular, because they're so much smaller, you can really have sort of a larger effect on changing the future of a company. And I'll give some numbers on this. I'm also super, super hardware biased because of pretty much like a decade of work in the hardware space. And so while it is absolutely true that software is eating the world, it is also absolutely true that it's called Silicon Valley and not Fortran Valley. And that's because the original, the thing around which everything is built is the hardware. So while the autonomous cars may be driving faster because of the software update, like Chris said in the last session, the autonomous cars are still cars. And again, so my bias towards innovation is understanding it as a hardware concept, so as a product you can touch. And then entrepreneurship can exist in many contexts. Entrepreneurship can either exist in the I have founded a startup, or it can exist in sort of less traditional but sort of still self-starting kind of ways where you move forward and you've taken the initiative to do something within your company or do something within yourself that is also new. Right, what's innovation? Innovation can be either technology push or market pull. And technology push means that it's some kind of scientific breakthrough. It's some kind of technology that you were able to commercialize that then you put forth in the market, and it's this amazing new development that people realize finally that they need, like some kind of new, faster phone or something. Market pull is basically a response. Market pull is more reactive. It is consumers really, really need a way to get around those horrible taxi services, so people invented Uber as a response. There's no technology, so to speak, that enabled Uber, Lyft, Sidecar, whatever, to become big. It's entirely some software around what was originally a need. And either one of those is absolutely legitimate innovation, and you absolutely need both kinds. But in either case, you can't just have, say, a scientific breakthrough that nobody wants to buy. So the point of an innovation is that it is this breakthrough, or it is this realization of market need, but it has a customer. And so finding product market fit, finding customer fit, is really one of the most important parts of commercializing an innovation, and not just having a great new idea that no one's ever had before, which might just be dumb. Dumb ideas are often fine, but you need to make somebody buy it if you want to call it a real innovation. It can be disruptive, and another synonym for disruptive is creative destruction. And you can look at a lot of economic theory for this on either how the steel mills were disrupted, or how car production was disrupted, or even disrupting the trucking industry by Walmart sort of learning about just-in-time shipping, where they could lower their operating margins by only owning half the warehouses they actually need to own, because in fact most of their products are on a truck at any one time being put between warehouse and warehouse. And so they're just using the trucks as mobile warehousing space. And that kind of innovation, as an operations point of view, is fabulous and necessary and a profit driver, and exactly the kind of thing that ops people just love. But it's not necessarily disruptive beyond giving you a huge edge against the competition. Disruptive innovation, it has a lot to do with this sort of moving fast and breaking things theory that you get a lot in Silicon Valley. And one of the biggest problems, to generalize wildly, and you can argue with me if you want, in fact I encourage argument, that'd be great. One of the things that you see a lot from women is they don't love breaking things. They don't like the, I'm just going to disrupt an entire industry. And we'll talk about this later, but a lot of it ends up being due to attribution and recall bias. A lot of it means that if I go break an entire industry, everyone will remember that I'm the one that broke it, and they'll remember that my co-founder was the one that fixed it. And this kind of differential memory, sort of rewriting the narratives for history, is possibly one source of people's reluctance to do the more innovative things. They want to do sort of a safer thing that only solves maybe a smaller problem but offends fewer people in the process. And right, and it's a long product. It's a long process of product and business, and a lot of people sort of have more of a head for business or more of a head for product development. And you certainly don't need to have both, but you need to respect both. And so if you're looking for co-founders, you need a co-founder with that, or at the very least, you need to outsource and get consultants who are the right complement to you. And so innovation can come in a lot of guises, but it also has a lot of requirements. And then this is Marissa Meyer. So what is innovation these days? In particular, one of the evolutions in innovation over the past, I would say decade, but you can sort of, for any industry, you can go back and forth on the years, is much more open. The big kinds of innovation from the past are the kinds that I know. The kinds, like in physics, it was the Bell Labs, and every amazing advancement in microscopy and communications and hard drives and magnetic memory for your computer, all of these just came out of Bell Labs. Bell Labs was just this amazing powerhouse, this paragon of these brilliant people. All these people went there. If you were smart, you went to Bell Labs or IBM or Intel or whatever it particular was for your area. And nowadays, really, it's much more smaller, it's much more delocalized, and it's much more open and absorptive. And what I mean by that is people, instead of just having this in-house research where the next step of the technology transfer and the next step of the commercialization process is just another department within your company, what it often is it's then a partnership with a completely different company. And this is both an advantage, sort of, for women in general, but it's also a complete disadvantage because then you have the networking effect. What that means is if you know people and you pay attention to what your friends are learning and you pay attention to what other companies are doing, and you can absolutely take advantage of that. You can license to whoever you want. But also that means that in any cases where there are sort of more sort of resilient, or at least more longer-standing sort of boys' clubs about things, and we can talk about what that means, that sometimes there are exclusions to the people who get that advantage. The most important thing about innovation in terms of if you're looking for a way to innovate yourself, if you're looking for a thing that you personally could take to the world and bring as your billion-dollar idea, founders for things are lead users. And lead users are the kind of people who are so entrenched in whatever it is that they're doing. They are the expert in whatever that is, from ice climbing to whatever you want. And they have this observation advantage. And the observation advantage is, I know so much about this one particular topic that I can tell you I can describe, I can really, really articulate all of the needs that another user, even if they're of a lower level than me, even if they're sort of more of a hobbyist than a professional, they could also take advantage. Like I use ice climbing as an example because a lot of the original founders of, the people who invented Gore-Tex and so on, were ice climbers, and they knew that their materials needed to be light, really light, and strong, and ripstop, and all of these advantages, and they knew what was negotiable and what was not negotiable. And what they discovered was negotiable was the price. So as it turns out, you can just charge $200 for a t-shirt. You just can, as long as it has all of the physical properties that your ice climbers needed. And so this is a completely different kind of market where you're just making some little commodity piece of whatever, and it has to be 52 cents because everyone else in the world makes it for 52 cents, and it really doesn't matter what it's made of. Okay, yeah, and I already said software is eating the world. And the other important point about innovation and how it relates to entrepreneurship is innovations can't really exist in a vacuum. So an innovation is not an innovation, as I said earlier, until it's taken to market. It's just kind of a crazy new idea. And crazy new ideas are great, and I have as many 3 in the morning crazy ideas as anyone, but unless I take them to market, it doesn't matter. It's just talking. And so entrepreneurship is the idea of taking it to market and moving it forward. And one of the most non-negotiable ways of entrepreneurship is through sort of official technology transfer. Not just I have founded a company, but I have the US Patent Office behind me saying I invented this idea, this device to control whatever. So I can either patent something, I can license it to all these partners that I was talking about with this open innovation. I can license it for money or I can license it for free, depending on what I get out of the partnership. Or I can flat out open source it, and open sourcing it is still making a product out of it. And in fact, then it is still remembered that, oh, you were that one that invented this particular open source product. And then, of course, more people are contributing to it. So then it's often a win-win. Another way that innovation sort of goes, or at the ultimate end goal, I suppose, is getting money out of it. You don't just have customers that are happy, but you have money out of it. And there are some ways in sort of decreasing level of prestige, and this is really important, sort of decreasing level of prestige for how you then make money. You can either attract venture capital, and attracting venture capital is this, it's this badass game, and it's really competitive, and it's really aggressive, and so on. And so, we'll look through some numbers later on, and so this ends up, there are many venture capital forms out there with portfolios that have 3% of their companies with women founders, and so on. Sort of a different level of prestige, and some people sort of take this as a real badge of honor, and some people really don't because there are advantages to taking VC, is bootstrapping. And so what that means is at every stage of the game, you are taking money from grants, or you have one customer and you work exclusively for that one customer for a while until you can move on to having the next customer. And what that means is that you personally own 100% of your company, whereas if you've taken venture capital, they own half, or they own a third, or whatever terms you've agreed upon. Acquihire, so somebody's decided your idea is good enough that they're not going to bother and develop it in their own house, they're just going to buy you. This is all right. I mean, this is great. This is certainly people's goal. I'm always suspicious when people say, I've just founded a company, my entire goal is to be bought by Google, because it's sort of, I mean, then nobody at Google respects you because you didn't really, I don't know. And Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is, by percentages, the one where women do best. By far, women do, it's pretty egalitarian actually on Kickstarter because this is all storytelling. You can abstract your face away. That nice female voice doing the narration, it could be the CEO, it could just be someone they hired. And so if people have negative associations or would have some kind of negative bias, they can kind of pretend it doesn't exist. And so in fact, some of the most successful percentage-wise ways of raising money for women involve Kickstarter. Unfortunately, it is by far the lowest prestige. It is by far the lowest amounts of money. It is by far the lowest amount of leverage for moving forward. And so that's frustrating. Yeah, that's frustrating. That's my only point. What I will say is a lot of what people complain about is women-founded startups in tech, and they mean pure software, only software. But women are crushing it in the sectors of biotech, the media. In New York City, there are drastically more by percentage female entrepreneurs than there are in San Francisco. And that's because in New York City, the big sectors, the industrial sectors, are real estate, media, fashion. I don't remember the rest. There's a list. But women are crushing it, and so percentage-wise, they're crushing it. And so, and as biotech startups, biomedical startups, so it's clearly not that they're stupid or it's a problem, right? Or they have some sort of inherent problem. It's clearly just some particulars of some industries. And so that's sort of a point to make when you're considering what is and is not a problem about venture capital as a whole, or which particular industrial sectors seem attractive. Right. This is what I alluded to this quickly before, but the reason I'm really interested in startups, the reason I have worked in startups for over a decade, and is because Microsoft can hire 100. I see that. I'll tell you everyone else about it in a second. Microsoft can hire 100 female engineers, and they can change a couple of significant figures over. It doesn't matter. But when you get companies that are still a handful of people, they're either just some co-founders and the first engineer or so on. You can go from 0 to 25, 0 to 33, I mean, frankly, even 0 to 50% women just with a single hire. And again, taking that to extrapolating to its logical conclusion, if you even start with female co-founders, you have qualitatively and probably quantitatively changed the entire direction of the entire company. There's an HBR study, so there's a Harvard Business Review study showing that diversity in and of itself can drive innovation. Just having some different perspective around whether it is someone of an ethnicity that understands the custom. There happens to be, one guy of the same ethnicity at your first customer, and that's your big customer, so they're actually willing to sort of talk. Or there's a woman who's actually at the table in the other company, and they feel this important kinship. So you can, the developments just move a lot faster when you have people of any other perspective than just what the most default might be. I like this picture. I hope everyone understands this picture. I had to explain it to my mom. So at medium-sized startups, and I hope it doesn't become a problem for large startups, but I have a little case study later on for where it is a little bit of a problem. There are often sort of 3 guys named Dave, 2 guys named Matt, and probably a Josh. I don't know. But there's a little dance, and this is, unfortunately, this was animated on my PowerPoint, but I had to move it to the, what's this system called? Anyway, I had to move it to this system, so it's not animated anymore. But there's a little dance when you get more girls than Daves at a company, and not every company makes it for about the first 2 to 3 years of their life, and so that's frustrating. Okay. Do be careful to look at the bottom of the screen. You can ask questions whenever you want. You don't have to ask questions till the end, at which point I will make you ask questions. But if you do it beforehand, then there might be less forcing at the end. Let's talk about women, but let's talk about other things. Hiring women is absolutely necessary. As I just alluded to, diversity is absolutely important, however your diversity comes. There's a lot more kinds of diversity than gender diversity. I certainly don't... Okay, so number one, I'm not going to pretend to speak for women, right? I'm speaking for me, but I'm certainly not going to pretend to speak for anything else. This is a picture of, I worked at a government research lab. It is a synchrotron. It's high energy particle, it's reasonably high energy physics. And my response, and I don't know what your response is when looking at a picture like that, that is all the employees of a government lab in Berkeley, California, a national lab, and my response is, wow, look at all those white people. And that's terrible. It's in Berkeley. You'd think they'd do better. But no, I mean, look at all those white people. So there's other kinds of problems as well. This happens to be the only one that 75 minutes is enough time to address. But just don't think that I'm writing off the other kinds. Okay, unicorns. Here's the problem with being special, okay? When you are the only whatever in the room, whether your whatever is the only tall person or the only short person or whatever your particular thing is, everybody looks to you to be that person, right? Then you are the tall guy, and then you are the girl who codes, then you are whatever. I am a woman, and I work in software engineer. So often I get called to be on all these annoying committees for let's increase diversity in software engineering. My sister is also a woman. My sister is an English major. She doesn't get called to be on committees for gender diversity. But conveniently for her, she's also gay. So she does get called to be on the committees for that. God forbid you are either a person of color who is anything other than cisgendered, heterosexual, the most normal, the most liberal viewpoints of the world, because then people will have you be the representative of whatever you are at any one time. Unicorns are basically terrible. It's a waste of a lot of your time. Learn to say no to be on all these committees. Say yes to the ones that are obviously valuable, but it is a way in which you can sort of get shunted off into doing a lot of, again, low prestige, high value, because of course it's more important to do diversity, but you don't want to at all times be representing yourself as the what's the phrase, like model minority or whatever. You want to just be doing your work. You want to just get your stupid coding done. So anyway, that's my point about unicorns. This is the attribution and recall bias that I was talking about. This is in Silicon Valley, the absolute coolest thing that you can do is moving fast and breaking things. There's even this category of news story in like TechCrunch and in VentureBeat and so on, and people sort of half-jokingly refer to it as failure porn. And what it is it's this, oh, well, at my last company, we were $7.5 million in debt. We were out of cash. We had, the binders full of credit cards, and then the creditors were just coming, and we had no money, and we had to set everything on fire and change our names. And that's fine if then you can bounce back and then you can say, okay, but that's all right, because at my new company, we're totally going to revolutionize apps, whatever you can do. Women have the problem that is exactly presented in this XKCD comic, which is a lot of times people will then generalize from that. They will say, not just sort of you suck at math, but all girls suck at math. And that's, it's not fair. It's something to talk about. There's this great study at Stanford that ended up in a book called sort of, I think it's something like what works with women at work, like how to encourage women to take risks at work. And one of them is, well, actually, hang on, this is great. Okay. You don't have to read it, but you totally can. And there might be printouts. I don't know if there's printouts, but this is a McSweeney's article. McSweeney's is very funny. All of you should read it. Somebody pointed out that maybe you don't necessarily read that here, but it's an English thing. And this is just a list of some of the sort of contradicting advice that women get as entrepreneurs. And often this will be from the same person in the same breath, sort of, do more of this. Oh, also do less of this. You're very bad for doing too much of this. Also, you're very bad for doing too little of this. And people without the self-awareness to think this through. And again, this is a thing that I blame women for as well. Women will absolutely do this to other women. This is not an all men are bastards complaint. Like really, it's not. Neither is the entire talk. But it is a human beings can't help themselves sometimes. Like it's just human psychology, and you really just need to be aware of the things that are self-contradictory when you're forming an impression of someone. Right. So it's you don't smile enough. You smile too much. You aren't good at promoting yourself. You're too pushy because you promote yourself too much. And these seem like such obvious contradictions, but there's any number of times that you'll sort of hear them and you'll just go, wait, that's not fair. Right. Okay. So here's part 3. And part 3, oh, let me make sure I actually said everything I was going to say. Yeah, I did. You have to push the thing. Oh, you just want to take a break? Do you always take breaks? No, we don't always take breaks. If you just want to go to the bathroom, you can totally go to the bathroom now. Okay. Okay. Well, everyone else, we can just hang out. Right, so this is part 3. This is Get Mad. As I said, I will try and abbreviate it somewhat because it's almost not constructive. The only constructive part about it is that sometimes there are sort of terrifying things that you're like, wow, I must have done something so terribly wrong to have this happen. And you didn't. It's fine. So we'll catch him up. Okay. So the first thing we'll start with is some billboards that have been running around San Francisco recently. Wow. And again, I had a beautiful Tumblr for this, but it didn't show up on my animation. It's just it's someone going, that is tacky and I hate you. And it's, you know, look, this section, I'm going to go sort of in increasing level of annoyance, right? Because this, obviously, you just sort of look and you go, oh, guys. Because this is a company, and I tried to scribble them out, because I don't want to do the what they had hoped, which was then have them, by being shared, because people were so offended, have their website go everywhere. You know, we make tech sexy. They call themselves Tech Playboy. You know, I don't know. I don't love it, but what am I going to do? You know, Computer Engineer Barbie, I'm glad it exists, but then by page 6 of the Computer Engineer Barbie book, she goes and asks like Scott the Barbie to do her actual code, because she's only doing the designing. And you know, this is harmless, but it's the 1,000 paper cuts kind of deal. Again, you know, NPR, liberal bastion of forward-thinking whatever, and still they did an article called Fashion in Tech a couple months ago, and these are the people they asked. There's a problem. And again, like, not a huge deal. The reporter who wrote the article even wrote the next article and said like, oh, oops, and verbatim the first words in the next article were, my bad. So that's kind of a problem, but again, like, whatever. Here's some of my absolute sort of favorite, both happened to me and happened to other people I know, in a bullpen full of software engineers. I work in an office. Our company's still very small. We're only 7 people. As we all point out, we've grown 100% year on year, because last year we were only 3 people. And we're 100% more now. The entire office is probably like twice the size of this room, and there's 5 pretty small companies, and we all have our space. And in this entire office, we're all just sitting there. We're doing our coding. We've all got our headphones on, and I'm always the one that gets tapped on the shoulder by visitors when they say I'm here for my appointment, and I'm always like, I can't help you. Not only can I not help you, but I've now just decided not to help you, especially because you made that. Yeah. You will go to, for some of my older companies, you'll go out to a venture pitch, or you're going out to just some networking event, and you'll get the ever attractive, don't worry, my wife's out of town for the weekend. Not helpful, not constructive, nothing to do with investment. As I mentioned, or as Megan mentioned, I'm a material scientist by training, and material science is this pretty cool intersection of mechanical engineering, some physics, some chemistry. Depending on how you take it, it's more, you can go in sort of the electronic engineering direction, whatever you want to do with it. But when I would introduce myself to people on airplanes, because you just have like the 2 seconds of chat so that you know each other are like safe, not terrorists, whatever. And the 2 seconds of chat, I would say I'm a material scientist, and they'd always go, oh, that's nice, dear, sewing? And I was always like, no. We're not going to talk for the rest of the flight, okay. A particular Indian-American woman CEO that I know that I respect greatly, she's been doing pitches and pitches and pitches, and she was having just sort of a surprising lack of success with the VCs that she was dealing with. And then one time, another Indian guy kind of like waved her over afterwards, and he was like, I think, I'm not sure you understand why you've been having such a lack of success. It's because we don't know what to do with you. It's because we know what to do with Indian guys, and we know what to do with women CEOs, and we just don't know what to do with both, like someone who is both. And again, that's like almost an example of being a unicorn, but it's almost an example of the absolute failure that it is for when a venture capitalist makes a lot of their decisions based on pattern matching. Because you need to make these rapid-fire decisions that might or might not result in $1 billion profit for your own self. And if you make them based on pattern matching, then you're going to continue to fund the people that you were funding 5 years ago, just in their new incarnation. One particular thing is you get the work-life balance talks. So you'll get your nice dude friend, and he'll go off and he'll give what it's like to write real code, and you'll get and how many kids do you have, and do you take them to school yourself, and are you a bad mother, or and are you et cetera talks. And sort of the entire time there is, yeah, but I'm a software engineer. We can talk about like my opinions on Node.js versus Django, or we can talk about like how you feel about the sort of the throughput of Hadoop if you want, but I guess we're not going to. The only thing I will say is actually, so as a physicist, as a research physicist, there were 2 women with my position out of 40, so that makes 5%. My very first software engineering job, so 1 ago from now, there were 3 women out of 30. And I was the only person who thought that was awesome, because that was 10%, and that's more. And so I was the only person who was like, 10% is amazing. And then, I was informed that actually maybe my standards were a little low, but nevertheless, I love this image. This is Ellen Pao as Madonna. Or as like the Christian Madonna, and just take a moment to appreciate the absolute beauty of the styling there. So she's having the cuts of Christ, but nevertheless it's with cursors. It's great. I found this in an article in San Francisco Magazine a couple days ago. We love it. Okay. But oh yeah, I forgot to say the important thing. I forget to say the important thing all the time. The important thing about this slide is here we are going up. First, there were just some stupid billboards, and that's just annoying, but it's tacky, so you can sort of discount it. Then there was, whatever was this? Then it's, the occasional, even completely oblivious fashion blog or NPR report that is just colorblind, and you're like, all right, that's stupid. Now we get to Ellen Pao. Ellen Pao, you know this background? Yes, I see enough nods that I'm going to say yes. Has been being personally and professionally smeared as a human being for the last 6 months to 2 years. She has been, every single thing that has been bad about her, and how she's clearly stupid, and she clearly slept with these people, and she clearly, is just exploiting her sexuality for whatever. This is obviously professionally incredibly damaging for her, and this starts being the time when it stops being funny, and it stops being just like roll your eyes tacky, and it starts being you are destroying people's lives kind of thing. And then we move on to stuff like this, where not only are we destroying people's lives by their professional reputation, but we're sending fairly serious death threats, rape threats, sexual torture threats, and sort of so on. And this is just kind of, it's almost not surprising that it happened, and that in and of itself is one of the most depressing things. The virulence with which it happened is obviously both surprising and clearly terrible, but the fact that it happened, yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's everything from people will come, and my dev team right now, I run a team of about between 3 and 4, depending on whether the 4th one's listening to me that week. I run a dev team of 3 and 4, and regularly investors will come, and the CEO will say, this is our dev team, and the investor will come, and they will shake the other people's hands and smile at me. And that frustrates me, and when I was working in Japan, it was fine, because, we don't necessarily, the handshaking just wasn't like a thing. But this is California. You shake someone's hand. So, I don't know. There's, what was I going to say? Oh, territorialism. But then what comes, so then we have this sociocultural sort of, the thing that we do when we want to put someone down is we make these sexual torture threats, these death threats. People have to leave their homes because they're actually trying to protect themselves. And what happens is then you've also caused division amongst people who should sort of more naturally be allies, people who are otherwise kind of the actual oppressed minority as opposed to the oppressed gamers kind of thing. So I don't know if you saw this. This is from Newsweek, I think so February. This is from Newsweek a little more than 2 months ago. I love this cover also. It's incredibly inappropriate, but it caused a wonderful discussion. And the wonderful discussion obviously took the place of a lot of internet trolling comments, but there's always sort of nuggets. You can kind of find people who are saying something smart in amongst the, you should die. So if you looked for that, it was absolutely there. But what we also got then was a reaction, which was not just what Silicon Valley thinks of women, but then sort of amongst women there was the, oh, well, clearly that never happens to me because, I just wouldn't stand for that. And it's like, well, okay, sure, that's naive. And so, as I say, it's sort of the worst workplace bullying I've observed has been sort of woman on woman. You get this terrible territorialism sometimes because if you are the one who gets there first, then clearly you weren't the token hire, and anyone else after you is a token hire. So, you carve out your area and then you jealously guard it, and that's obviously terrible. So, sort of my point here is just to come at everything with a mark of solidarity, or at least it doesn't need to be solidarity like, we have the same parts, so we should be friends. It should be just more like, you're a human being, so I will give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's pretty much all. But the important response to this is what Silicon Valley women think of Newsweek. And Silicon Valley women were not happy with Newsweek. But this is a TechCrunch article. TechCrunch purports to, but doesn't, speak for the technology community. TechCrunch at least had the self-awareness to only say some, because I guarantee you in at least the first couple revisions of that article, it was called What Silicon Valley Women Think of Newsweek. But, and it is nice to try not to speak for everyone, but that's fine. So, as long as we're angry, as long as we've had our death threats and our rape threats and our completely unnecessary flirtations by people who we were otherwise having business relationships with, okay, you're pissed off. That's cool. What are you actually going to do, though? So let's move forward. This brings me to step 4. Step 4 is being constructive. It is some realizations that you can have in your own head. Or here, don't read that. It is some realizations that you can have in your own head for how you move forward yourself. It is some realizations of in your own head how you can, if you are in a position at a new company, when you go out into the world, how you can consider some of your hiring practices. It's some constructive ways that you can kind of approach just, as I mentioned earlier, just giving people the benefit of the doubt sometimes and going like this. The example I want to give, the place I want to have a quick discussion is there are companies, possibly through no malice at all, and again, it's often through no malice at all, that have gotten reasonably large and have no women engineers and no sort of women in the leadership position and so on and so forth. And I'd just like to give one particular example, and then we can talk quickly about any ways that you can think of for how we're going to deal with it. This is company X. And the picture, because I know you're going to read it anyway, is at one of the big problems is sometimes at conferences, in particular like DEF CON, so some of the more like hardcore security conferences, women will get sort of the, oh, that's nice, honey, is your husband speaking? No. Or whatever, and often and sometimes it's as low as sort of the sort of overly friendly rub around the shoulders kind of thing. So what one attendee to DEF CON a couple years ago did was she printed up a bunch of cards, and there was red cards and yellow cards. And yellow cards are like it said here. It's basically somebody does something, and honestly, maybe it's unintentional, and maybe it wasn't meant to be a bad thing. But you kind of want to just call them out and be like, so that was wrong. You shouldn't have done that. Like no civilized human being would have done that. There were also red cards. Red cards, effectively, I don't remember what the actual text says, but the meaning is something like, you have just received this card. Be goddamn grateful you didn't just receive a punch in the face, because the thing that you just did is so inappropriate, so just not a behavior to be had in civilized society. Just hold this. And of course, what that led to was some wonderful streams on Twitter of sort of more candid shots of taking a picture of a guy holding a red card and looking like, what? But anyway, so that was excellent. But the dilemma that we're going to talk about, the very quick case study that we're going to have is for Company X. Company X exists right now in San Francisco. It is a Series C company, so it has a particular valuation. They've got serious investors, real grown-up company, genuinely doing things, releasing real products. They've got 70 total people, and 22 of those people are engineers. And one of the engineers is female, and she only started last Monday. So what they've decided, the situation right now is because they no longer have urgent hiring needs, like they don't need any particular, like, oh God, if we don't get this front-end person, or oh God, if we don't get this data scientist, we won't be able to move our product forward for the next couple of revisions to the product that we're going to need. So the internal recruiter has suggested hiring for diversity. The internal recruiter has said, why don't we just have the next 5 people that we hire be women? And the VP of engineering has said, screw that, because I don't want to hire someone just because they're a woman. I want to hire someone who has, competed their way to the top, kind of whatever. Also, from the new employee perspective, if she then sees that she is, one of 5 in a row that were clearly hired because someone had, by fiat, said, now we're going to hire chicks, that sucks. Then you feel like you're the one who, then, that just undermines basically everything you say in the entire company for the next, as long as your tenure there. So sort of, what's the deal? Where would we even go, given that they have gotten themselves into this bad of a situation? They have made it so that there's 21 until last Monday, and now 21 and 1 engineers in the company. Where do they sort of go? Where would they sort of look for problems? Is it a process problem, a culture problem? What questions would you need to ask in order to give them some recommendation for how they should proceed? Clearly the recommendation of only hire women forever is wrong, and clearly the recommendation of no, we'll just keep doing what we're doing and we'll just hope some women eventually get in is also wrong. So what do you do? I'll wait. Yes?
Maybe headhunt for women. I mean, I think there's not very many women in the industry, so it wouldn't be hard to find the good ones. And then you can kind of pick and choose. That way you get a woman, but also somebody who's capable of doing the job.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So she said headhunting, so specifically going out and sort of either on LinkedIn or through an actual sort of more personal firm going to your most qualified female engineers and saying either who would you like to come, or can you recommend anyone who would come? And so I like that idea. That's a very, very good idea. The only concern I would have is the women who do exist get these offers all the time, and sort of as a side effect of this unicorn thing that I was talking about. And so what if your success rate in that is just not very high? I do like that idea. I think that is something they should pursue, by the way. I saw 1 hand and then 2 hands. Yeah, great. That's a really good one. Absolutely. So she said, just even look at the hiring process. Like, why are only 2% of your applicants women in the first place? I mean, like, if you can get 10 to 14 to 20% in the whole industry at large, what the hell are you doing that's making it only 2? And so Hackbright is a wonderful organization. They are a coding academy. They're one of those boot camps, but they only allow women students. And some of their mentors are men, but all of the students are women. And Hackbright has this almost consulting policy. They have a standing offer for any company who wants to review their job posting policy, to review their job posts with them, to see if there's any kind of off-putting words or if there's any kind of subconscious, like, biased language in the job post. So that's absolutely a good idea. Yeah. Yeah.
I was saying it also can start in, like, universities and places like this. I mean, IST still has, like, historically pretty low women involvement rates. So, like, if you have people graduating from IST with, like, the class being 10% women, you're not gonna, like, improve the workforce. So I guess, like, programs here would really improve it as well, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So that's a totally valid point. Look, if you're only going to graduate 10% women in an IST class, how are you going to expect more than 10% in the workforce? And yeah, that's a problem. I'm sure your professor has talked about that. But if there's 10% sort of graduating from IST, why is it still only 2% at this company? And what I think the answer is you're absolutely right, and we should absolutely increase the percentage of women undergraduates. We should absolutely increase the percentage of women taking what's it called, AP Computer Science. We should absolutely increase the percentage of 12-year-olds who know what an Arduino, 12-year-old girls who know what an Arduino is, and so at every step of the way, absolutely, increasing the pipeline is absolutely a step. Yeah, that's one of the ways that I think a lot of organizations are really hoping to broaden even the applicant pool. And again, maybe that would help get the numbers up a little bit. So those are all great suggestions. Those are all the start. Yeah. I mean, so the point that I was just trying to make is, look, there's not an answer. There's not one answer. There's all the answers. And the answers are, yeah, you have to you have to try a little harder, and yeah, you have to increase the applicant pool, and yeah, you absolutely have to make sure that you're not doing anything really terrible or offensive in your job postings. And that's one of the next slides is actually the job postings one, because that was the one that I have the most quantitative data on. But yeah, the solution is broad. There's no sort of one person that can say, I'm going to fix this at my company by only hiring women, because that's obviously a terrible idea. You don't just want to make again, just by fiat, you just don't want to do that. Oh. Job postings. Job postings are incredibly problematic. It's a good rule of thumb that men will apply for a job posting where they're only qualified for 60% of the line items, whereas women will only apply for a job posting where they're qualified for 100% of the items. So that's a problem because job postings are often just wish lists, and delusional ones at that. Job postings are, I want someone with 10 years experience in this thing, and in fact, I work a lot in open source, and I have actually seen job postings, I take screenshots of them all the time, and they're, I need at least 10 years experience in Node.js. And anybody who knows what Node.js is knows that it only got invented in 2010. So you can't have 10 years experience in it. And so this is clearly just some recruiter that wrote, I want these things, and I need someone really experienced. What does really experienced mean? Oh, 10 years. Which is clearly just nonsense, right? And when you phrase things as, I need someone with the ability to deploy and maintain servers with the following throughput requirements and the following database backing, then you have actually defined a job capability, as opposed to just some sort of arbitrary number that then discriminates against people who either just got out of school and are gullible enough to trust that the job posting is really true. Of course, it's not. So this is a thing that you personally, everyone in this room, you can do for your very own self when you're looking at a job posting. You try and read between the imaginary lines and look at it and go, yeah, sure, you know what, maybe I qualify for 100% of these line items, but is that actually what the job is going to be? No, okay. Or you say, maybe I only, or alternatively, maybe you go, oh, maybe I only apply for 60% of these job qualifications, but I have this other one that they clearly didn't think about, and it would actually be a huge benefit to the company. And so everyone, men and women, can look at job postings and just try and extract the truth of them. And that's sort of one step that you can do yourself without needing to reform the system. A couple of problematic words, because they sound really competitive and angry and aggressive. Well, I'm not really sure what they are, but they are problematic, just sort of statistically speaking. Like hacker, rock star, ninja. It's always trendy in tech job postings to say we want like a Django ninja. What the hell is that? That doesn't mean anything. But it attracts the sort of person who's like, oh yeah, I'm a Django ninja, and you don't want that kind of person because they're weird. But it's a really it implies that if I am a ninja at something, I am the best. I am clearly, unequivocally the best at this whatever particular server or language or Java or whatever your particular deal is. And a lot of again, generalizing wildly, argue if you want, but like what a lot of women will do is they'll go, oh well, I'm good at that thing, but I'm not like the best in the entire universe at that thing, and you clearly require the best in the entire universe. Which is obviously nonsense if you think about it through with a very clear head, but it's sort of hard to get around your initial impression of, oh, well, they need the absolute very best and I'm just normal. Yeah, but so A, there's some terrible coders out there who call themselves the very best that you can just be better than, and B, like, no, they actually probably don't need the very best. And whether A or B is more persuasive to you, take that, right? Take that as the one that is truth. It's either because other people are a lot worse than they act, or because you are a lot better than you realize. Whichever makes you feel better, take that. Another thing I will say is one sort of observation over the last decade, and it's been a coming trend for the several decades already, is girls have been doing better in school because, and maybe this is, you can ascribe this to the factory model of education where you have to sit still and listen for this amount of time, and this is a thing, and men want to be off hunting and whatever nonsense people come up with to sort of justify this. But what it means is that it's trendy now in Silicon Valley to be like, I don't care at all what your qualifications are. I don't care if you had a 4.0 at Penn State, or do you guys go to 5? I don't know. I don't care if you had a 5.0 at Penn State. That's not important. I need to know what your open source contributions are. And so it's merely an observation. This is not backed up by data at all. And your actual professor with actual gender studies knowledge can tell you real things, but this is just my observation. So girls do better in school now, and so now school has magically started to matter less. So those are bad job postings. Bad job postings are competitive. They talk about being the absolute best in the universe. Good job postings say that salaries are fixed. Women, for whatever reason, and you want to shake them sometimes, because again, salary postings are also a lie, just as much as job postings are a lie. Women will show up and go, oh, you're offering me $100,000, cool. Whereas a dude will show up and go, oh, you're offering me $100,000. I mean, that's cool, but look, I had a 4.0 at Penn State. Like, I'm worth at least 120 and probably some equity. And they're like, yeah, all right. And they would have done the same if the woman had just asked, and it's really frustrating. So Ellen Pao, again, she comes back. She's acting CEO right now of Reddit, and they have just banned salary negotiations. And we'll see how that works. She's only been acting CEO there for like 2 months or something, so we can't tell any long-term benefit, but it's a reasonable guess as any. One thing that a lot of companies do also right now is, do I have to finish at 1? Is that right? Oh, those are the little numbers. Oh yeah, okay. Do I have to finish? Okay, 2:15. Good, because I'm not quite done. They're very, very clear about the no asshole rule. And the no asshole rule is actually, if you can sort of have this as a foundation of your company, it's already, even if for the time being you only have men, or even if for the only time being you only have women, the no asshole rule as like an explicit stated human resources document in your company is actually incredibly valuable. And literally, I have seen human resources documents for some of my friends' startups that are 1 line long, not just 1 page, but 1 line, and it is no asshole rule. And that means exactly what you think it means. It means no belittling people, no demeaning people. Somebody commits a bug, and they made a mistake, and they took your site down. No saying, you're so stupid, or oh, girl's so stupid. But like, okay, you made a bug. Let's investigate whether it's just because you're like sleep deprived, or whether it's because you actually didn't understand like some fundamental concept in whatever it was that you were changing. So let's do sort of more constructive debriefing, that kind of thing. Pair programming is actually really cool. I heard a nice description one time that if you told a 12-year-old girl about pair programming and software engineering, that you would sit effectively next to your very best friend all day long, and you would work on a shared screen, and you would just be partnering and collaborating the entire day long and hanging out with your best friend, every single one of them would want to be a computer scientist. Maybe not every single one of them, but like I can see a lot more. So pair programming is great. Unstructured interviews are like the worst. Unstructured interviews are the worst kind of interviews because all it results in is me hiring myself. All it results in is me hiring people who doing exactly the same fallacy that the venture capitalists have done when they're only funding and investing in people that they already recognize as matching a pattern that they already know. Interviewing, and I'm sure you've talked about this, without a standard list of questions and a standard rubric for how to answer the questions, ends up with me just being like, oh, hey, oh, cool, you went to my same school. Oh, cool, which dorm did you live in? And then, like, at the end kind of saying, okay, neat, do you want to write some JavaScript on the whiteboard? Versus someone who then I couldn't find a connection with, and then me just writing them, making them just code some recursion something that they get tripped up on, and then grading them harshly and sending them away. So unstructured interviews are the worst. They lead to, another thing they lead to is people who are, it biases for like pure computer science backgrounds. And there are absolutely jobs in the world that need a pure computer science background. If you are doing scalable systems at Facebook, you absolutely need a pure computer science background. If you are doing web development for some random startup, you absolutely do not need a computer science background. And so what a lot of these companies will do during their interview process is they'll ask you, oh, really, well, what's a singleton? And, what are all these concepts that, like, just sort of designed to find out whether you can sort of regurgitate a problem set that you can dig up fast enough. And that's obviously not relevant. So sort of another constructive way to move forward is by having, quick interviews to make sure that the person's not a big jerk, but then putting them on a temporary contract, giving them a 1 month paid, of course, this isn't just like giving them an internship or something terrible, paid contract work where you give them a compact problem that your company is actually trying to solve, you make them sign an NDA, whatever, then they work for the month for the company, and you really get to see how you interact on a day-by-day basis, and so on and so forth. And this ends up being a really constructive way to actually find people who don't just fit your first 5 seconds first impression rule, but they fit your, oh yeah, this person contributes not just in the avenue for which they were hired, but actually they'll sort of listen to the problems that other people on the team are having, and they will say, oh, I can contribute this sort of piece of knowledge. So this is a way to get better employees at all. This isn't just like a get more women. This is a get better employees kind of way. Okay, good, I do have it. So further institutional interventions, so there's personal interventions, there's women can read job descriptions and go, yeah, but this is a lie, and then they can go through with that perspective and choose to apply for a job. That's one thing. There's, your hiring manager can sort of intentionally have in the back of their head, oh, I should intentionally hire for diversity or whatever. But one thing that has been recently an absolutely excellent back-channel interview process has been hackathons. And hackathons, I can't say enough good things about doing hackathons. You should all do them. It's fabulous. It's a really concentrated amount of time where you work together, you get really tired, you have something that you can actually write up and publish at the end. You just deploy it to Heroku, you have a thing, you can link people to it. It's way better than some stupid summer internship where you didn't do anything on your resume. And maybe you did something your summer internship, I don't know, but maybe you also didn't, right? And so hackathons, like Silicon Chef, are in fact all women. And that is a good thing, and I'm glad they exist. It was anyone who was over the age of 16 and wanted to come do a hardware hackathon at this particular coding academy was totally able to come. They brought mentors in for every team, so you really, some of these young women couldn't code their way out of a paper bag at the beginning of the weekend, and by the end of the weekend they had their their Arduino. And my favorite project, actually, at the last one where I mentored, was a zombie detector. And a zombie detector is actually super clever, and so they won because I thought their idea was great. A zombie detector. What's a zombie? Well, it moves, and it's not alive, so it's cold. So they used both the motion sensor, the pyroelectric motion sensor attachment on their Arduino, and they read the data from that. And they also used the temperature sensor from their Arduino, for attachment to their Arduino, and they read the data from that. And then they set up an algorithm, and it was pretty simple, it was just a weekend, that if something was moving and the condition was met that it was a cold thing that they discovered was moving, well, it must be a zombie. And so what they had was this little tree thing. Did you guys see Guardians of the Galaxy? So they had the tree from Guardians of the Galaxy, the Vin Diesel tree, and it was, yeah, root, exactly. And they put it in ice water, so it was really cold, and they moved it along on the table, and they had a little stupid cage thing. And then once they got it to there, then their detectors worked, and the cage fell immediately down. And I was just like, you captured your zombie, that's the best. And this is a ridiculous project, and obviously it doesn't matter, and obviously they're not going to turn this into the next Facebook or the next billion-dollar idea or whatever. But what they are going to do is they're going to go home and say, okay, cool, now I have this Arduino, because they won an Arduino because they won. What else can I do that is perhaps less crazy, that I could perhaps turn into a project or a business idea? The actual original reason why I was supposed to come this week, like I said, I live in San Francisco, Pennsylvania's far, was because I was supposed to help coordinate the all-women's hackathon that was supposed to happen at IST Startup Week. You will observe the all-women's hackathon did not happen at IST Startup Week because they decided at the last minute that, oh, well, you know, it doesn't fit in the schedule. It doesn't work with our thing. But what I will say subversively is that if you wish to advocate for one next year, you totally should because it's a good idea. Okay. Other institutional interventions. Etsy does this thing called hacker grants where anyone can basically write to Etsy and say, I have an idea, can I come code some stuff with you for a couple of weeks? They get a couple $1,000s. It's really great. You get to work with an Etsy. They give you like a peer mentor kind of thing. Peer mentoring is probably the most effective thing that younger people, sort of the under whatever number you want to count as young, some age people that, because hierarchical mentoring doesn't work. Hierarchical mentoring for dudes is fine. You can just say, well, you know, I'm a junior engineer, I'll have a senior engineer mentor me, and they'll have the VP of engineering mentor them, and they'll have the CTO mentor them, and they'll have, you know, some other great CTO of a bigger company mentor them. But there just sort of aren't those chains at a lot of companies right now. So the most effective thing that can really happen right now is peer mentoring. So you can kind of say, look, you know, I am the senior engineer, I'm running a team at a particular company, but I kind of don't know where I am. And you can just get together and you can just hash that out with someone. So you can just have somebody that's a sounding board. So more of a peer rather than necessarily a superior who's telling you things from on high. And in particular, in today's sort of fast-changing world, that ends up being a little more important because a lot of people's advice from 10 years ago sort of doesn't matter, right? Because it's just wrong. Because like I was saying, the innovation landscape has changed so much and sort of the face of startups has changed so much that it's almost only worth having advice from people who are living it right now or only a little tiny bit before you. It's always nice to have very, very senior people, and it's always nice to have people with just the decades of amazing experience founding just company after company. But a lot of some of the most present answers you'll get are from right now. Yeah, so there's organizations that do that. Also, go tomorrow, 12:15, Hub, Adora Chung is speaking. She's a great, great speaker. She's super got her act together. She will just kind of talk numbers forever and ever. She's the CEO and founder of HomeJoy. She's doing the Silicon Valley Startup Week thing. Go see her. She's really smart. Thank you for your attention. Ask me questions now. Yeah.
Yellow and the red.
Oh yeah.
In your experience, when say like somebody would come up to you and shake everybody else's hands and then just like smile at you and that kind of thing, how often do you find that you call people out for being inappropriate?
Yeah. Rarely, and that's so sometimes. Okay. So okay. Let me give you a specific example. And let me also just talk about the cards for a second. The cards, I'm not advocating, by the way, as like a permanent solution. They were like a funny sort of very passive-aggressive thing that this one person did for this one conference. And it turned out to be wildly popular because it turns out there's just a lot of inappropriate things that happened at that conference. In specific, yeah, so for example, one of the, I happened to be corresponding with someone who was going to be a speaker when I was inviting them for a science talk. And I don't have an email signature because I don't bother so I just signed things Kate. And I had corresponded, and I was trying to be helpful. He was saying things like, when does my flight get in or whatever, and I was just like, oh, well, I think your hotel is this, and I hadn't realized, and I was just trying to be helpful. And then he showed up, and he sort of came to my office, and he just assumed that I was the secretary, and so the only thing I was able to do was kind of with like a very pointed look bring up just the fact that I would be escorting them to this. And in fact, I was the person who was running their tour later because it was my X-ray spectroscopy beamline that he was visiting, and it was my research that we were here to talk about, and it was so on and so forth. I also pointed out for recall bias a lot of times because, for example, I publish a lot of papers, but in science in particular, but also sort of for more open source projects, you'll find that things have a lot of co-authors, and a lot of them are just, because maybe it isn't just one person that invented something, like you really did work on it with a lot of people. And what I'll find is that when I'm talking about either an open source project that I've contributed to or a repository that I in fact wrote, people will say, oh yeah, there's actually this really, and we'll be talking about something else, and they'll be like, oh yeah, there's actually this really cool kind of related project. Ryan, who's a person I work with, Ryan wrote it. And I'm like, no, I wrote it. Actually look at the, who the repository, like GitHub has everything like namespaced, and it's like, no, it's pretty clearly there under Kate Monkeys. Like it's pretty clearly me. And they'll be like, no, but Ryan wrote it. And I'll be like, no. And occasionally we'll go back and forth a few times. And it both helps and doesn't help. And in some cases in particular for, maybe for older people, like there's just this bizarre cognitive dissonance that happens when I'm pointing out that clearly it was my work. And at that point I just drop it because it's not going to help. But for people that I can kind of just show up and be the one who is present in the room and be the one who is clearly running the meeting, or be the one who is clearly answering the question. People on my dev team, like an investor will ask them a question and they will clearly look to me and say, I don't know, why, what's the answer about either our user numbers or so on. And so, just existing. You just have to exist in a sort of positive, pushy way, and you just have to kind of hope that people eventually get it. Cool. Yeah.
When you got introduced, it said that you had spent some time overseas in Japan. I was just wondering, how do you deal with like gender discrimination with kind of like in the global community? Because obviously they come from different cultural backgrounds, and then just like what it's like, what kind of discrimination you kind of faced over there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I have lived now in Singapore, Japan, the Czech Republic, Germany, England. I've done work in all these countries. I've worked in a couple of states. I still find. I've never found it to be like an obvious problem. Like no one has ever said, you must go, sit over there because you don't know what you're doing. But the thing that probably overrode almost the gender discrimination is often in Asian, like I found, like in Singapore in particular, it was clear that I was just a visitor, and so it was sort of like my colleagues at the National University would be like, you're just a visitor kind of thing, so we don't need to actually include you in things. But that was like an American thing, or an American-Canadian, North American thing. That was an American-Canadian thing. Japan was actually wonderful, and so my sister lives right now in Korea, and she's sort of saying like, oh, well, it's this terrible, or she was saying that, and now she's been there 6 months, and she's like, no, actually, it's just because I'm foreign. But Japan was wonderful for me. There's an absolutely amazing science culture that all they want you to do is publish a paper, and they don't care who you are. And they want you to have published another paper, actually. Why aren't you done yet? And so that was really nice. I was certainly an oddity, but nobody made like a negative deal out of it. And so there were absolutely situations where I was excluded from things, but there were a lot of cases where I could sort of psychologically justify that to myself as, oh, well, my Japanese isn't really good enough right now. One thing that will happen is I spend a lot of time making excuses for myself, and I know a lot of people spend a lot of time making excuses for themselves. They're like, oh, don't worry, that person wasn't being sexist. It was just because I did something wrong. And so, I'm not really sure of the right answer to this, but I have found that in almost all industries there are reasonable human beings, and you can like sort of intentionally work with them. And in almost all industries, there are kind of jerks, and you can just kind of intentionally not work with them. Yeah?
What do you do in those kind of situations in like determination that for you to stay positive and not get frustrated?
Oh, I'm just a rampant narcissist, so I don't mind. No. So genuinely, the real answer is you just have to. I just don't even. Yeah, I just can't even. Like sometimes people will say things, and I'm seriously just like, what? All right. And then, but in my head, I have just written that person off completely, and that's not necessarily positive, and that's absolutely not. I'm not recommending that as a solution, but in a lot of cases, that's really I'm just like, oh well, done with you, okay. I think, yeah, honestly, I have cultivated the ability to be like, okay, done with you, and just not absorb influence from that person anymore. And it's fine, but every once in a while when it happens like several times in a day just by complete coincidence, just by like random chance, then at the end of the day, yeah, I feel kind of defeated and it kind of sucks. And then I go home and I'm, it doesn't have to be necessarily like I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, and people like me or whatever, but it needs to be, you need to go out and, be with the people who remind you that you're awesome because whatever. Whether it's because of how productive of a scientist you are, or this. One of the things that I do is I do a lot of art. I do a lot of technology art, so I use graphics, and I use a lot of visualizations and graphics from data to make kind of like neat projects about things. And so I'll go and I'll just like play with some of those for a while, and that's, I guess, the most constructive thing I would say. But the actual answer is really you just like write people off occasionally. And if you are a mature and wise and wonderful person, then you give them a chance later, or you go and you constructively and positively explain to them why they made you feel excluded for that moment. But really, there are people that's just not going to work on, just flat out. And you just have to write them off, unfortunately. Cool. And if there's no more questions, then you get to leave 3 whole minutes early.
We actually have one final question.
Sorry.
It's a question that we've been asking all of our speakers at their sessions, kind of on a different topic. But could you share with us what you believe the next big thing or the big wave to come in your industry would be? As like artificial intelligence.
It's a crazy question.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, she wants to know what the next big thing in my industry is going to be. So I'm going to define my industry as AI, and it will be when the robots come. I will also define my industry as healthcare because we use our artificial intelligence for healthcare. And the actual serious, non-flippant answer for what the next big thing is personalized medicine. So sort of more both in terms of genetic analysis to know what you personally are more susceptible to, but personalized reminders and behavior modifications and nudges to deal with sort of your personal foibles, like, oh, maybe you always eat late and you're afraid that you're gaining weight, so we'll just try and send you a little push notification on your phone that will remind you not to do that. So personalized medicine is the non-flippant answer, and the flippant answer is the robots. Thank you.